Concept of democracy. A historical perspective. Some 500 years before the birth of Christ, the city-state of Athens made a political arrangement which placed the final authority in the hands of the people, rather than with the few or a single person. So rule by the people was the meaning of the term by which democracy began. But the connotation of this term acquired different shades with changing contexts and gradually evolved as a concept over the years. Now, the term conveys much more than rule by the people, in the case of a form of government or any other context. Philip G. Smith states the characteristic features of the Athens democracy: I. Rights and responsibility of every citizen for participation in a lawful government, e. A separation between public and private affairs, and e. Recognition that even private affairs should be regulated by socio-moral code that is in harmony with the principles that guide governmental affairs. Clearly, the Athens democracy involved the political, economic and social and moral considerations. Modern concept of democracy. The liberal democracy. The modern concept of democracy is the liberal form of democracy and is based on the United States Declaration of Independence, a statement made in 1776 which involved notions of natural rights and social contract as concepts of government. Many of the founding fathers of American democracy also considered the Greek concept of democracy. Following deliberations on concepts like equality, liberty and fraternity, they adopted a comprehensive view of these. The concept beneath the American democracy is based on Abraham Lincoln's idea of democracy: government of the people, by the people, and for the people. This definition implies that democracy is a process, not a society frozen into rigid political, economic and social order. The prime objective of this type of democracy is not to build up the authority of the state but to secure maximum fulfillment of individuals' abilities. Democracy will live only as long as it survives in the hearts of people, for it depends on an attitude towards life rather than upon laws. Democracy functions through peaceful give and take. The competing and conflicting groups must be given the opportunity to be heard properly. In no other way people can form an intelligent or reasoned judgment. Teachers need to practice this and nurture such feelings in children. Democracy as individual social ethic. Some advocates of democracy have argued that democracy should be considered as a title for a process. However, these days people are using democracy as the name for a set of principles, for a process or a way of governance. In this extended meaning of the term, democracy becomes related to nature of man and includes relation between man and nature, the individual and society, as well as with concepts like freedom, equality, authority, justice and many others. Each of these different considerations of man suggests a form of meaning of democracy, first as an ethic and then as a form of government. It follows that two societies having clearly different views of nature of man will employ the term democracy to refer to clearly different ideals and practices. Principles of democracy. We know that ethic comprises a set of guiding principles of human conduct. For example, there is a Christian ethic: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Persons holding different views concerning the nature of man and society may have consensus regarding some guiding principles for the regulation of individual social affairs, including political affairs. Actually, political structures are erected which are in consonance with the views of nature of man and society, and the guiding principles of human conduct. Although there is no complete agreement on principles of democracy, the following principles are commonly accepted and can serve as a good guide concerning the meaning of democracy. Respect for individuality and for the condition that promote the growth of human personality. Confidence in human intelligence formed and informed through the process of free, autonomous inquiry. The rights and responsibility for appropriate participation in investigation and resolution of problems of shared concern. These concerns and characteristics of democracy, which relate to individual social ethics, are explained through the following points. Respect for individuality. Earlier in this unit, it was held that different views about the nature of man would give different meanings to democracy. An individual who, for example, believes that individual's significance is related to the extent of his identification with the society to which he belongs, will give one meaning to individuality. And a person who believes in an individual's significance on the basis of her individuality alone will give entirely a different meaning to it. It follows that they will hold radically different opinions concerning the conditions that can best promote the growth of human personality. Majority of Indian societies reject both these extreme views. Almost all of us agree to the view that every individual, regardless of economic, social, racial or religious considerations, is ideally entitled to certain amount of privacy in matters that are not of public concern. Similarly, he is entitled to equality before law in those matters that are of public concern. When such entitlements are not acceded to, we say wrong has been done. Respect for individuality involves a distinction between public and private affairs. Depending on such distinction, a fitting adjustment is needed between individual independence and social control. To make a fitting adjustment between the two, some rules of conduct must be imposed by the law in the first place. What these rules should be is a principal question in human affairs. John Stuart Mill, 1859, in this regard, offers the following guide. That the only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent him to harm others. His own good, either physical or moral, is not a sufficient warrant. He cannot rightfully be compelled to do an act because it will make him happier, or because it will be better for him to do, or because in the opinion of others to do so would be wise or right. These are good reasons for persuading him but not for compelling him. We have right to deter a person or compel him not to do certain acts only in cases where his actions cause harm to others. John Dewey also once pointed out that individuals may be allowed to behave as they please, until the harmful effects of their actions are noted by the other persons. Individuals may thus be deterred to throw garbage on the street. Automobile manufacturers may be required to equip all new automobiles, which can control pollution, etc. The point to be noted here is that the respect for individuality entails recognition of some area of privacy and independence. It never implies for allowing the individual to do what she pleases. Intimately related to all these considerations is the matter of respect for the conditions that promote growth of human personality. In this regard, at least 2 points may be noted. First, growth, in the case of a process, is not without direction. That is, growth is not a simple change or alteration. Secondly, the effects of various conditions upon growth of personality are an empirical matter. Therefore, what particular conditions are to be respected at any given time involve both conceptual and factual considerations. On one hand, people hold that the particular image of a harmoniously developed and growing personality is not a static concept. For ensuring development of such a personality, we need scientific knowledge available at that time. So the principle does not impose closure upon democracy. It can remain forever unfinished. And presumably new potentials of human personality will be recognized. Confidence in human intelligence. Before we can set out to embark upon the question how democracy and confidence in human intelligence are related to each other, it is important to understand what exactly does the phrase, confidence in human intelligence, imply vis-a-vis democracy. Does it mean that intelligence is spread evenly throughout the population, that truth and right can be determined by majority vote, that the popular opinion is always right? It means that we are not afraid to follow truth wherever it may lead or to tolerate error. In the scientific or democratic community, the expert, the genius, the gifted, the talented can be set free to develop their ideas, without being told what truths the inquiries must confirm. And equally important, the less gifted can find honorable work to do and can command a fair hearing for their own ideas or suggestions. Confidence in human intelligence, therefore, means, not that we believe that every decision will be the best that could have been made, but that the collective intelligence, given appropriate conditions of free inquiry, will be good enough to keep open the avenues for correction and, in the long run, will be more successful than any available alternative. Neither science, nor democracy is based on any sort of religious or anti-religious commitment. As scientist, one recognizes that he as well as other scientists is equally free to speculate. Similarly, an individual member of a democratic community may adopt any faith as per the justification of a particular religion or any other justification based on humanistic or naturalistic grounds. Right and responsibility for appropriate participation. In the context of appropriate participation, democracy implies that every member of a given public has the right to participate in the investigation and resolution of the problem. It further implies that the individual has an interest and concern for the public and its interests and problems. The individual in a way feels embedded into the public. Because of having such a sense of belongingness to the society, public, the right of participation carries with it the responsibility to exercise that right. However, regarding the nature of participation, it does not follow that direct personal participation is necessary or even appropriate in different kinds of problems that arise. In democracy, such appropriate or feasible means of participation need to be devised in different situations. It is not the case that all questions should be settled by a simple majority. Any autonomous group, whether democratic or scientific, must struggle with the problem of devising the criteria or the design for the control of judgment and decision-making. This much is clear, that where democracy is taken seriously, every person regardless of age or intelligence does have a right to participate in decisions that affect any public of which he, she is a part of. Children are affected by family decisions, students are affected by educational decisions, and all of us are affected by political decisions. Remembering that democracy does not require direct personal participation, still the principle reminds us that in any area of life even benevolent dictatorship falls short of democratic ideal. Democracy in education. The concept of democracy, as we have discussed above, shows that it is based on certain assumptions which are basic to it and that make it most worthwhile for the growth of both the individual and the society. These basic faiths or tenets, equality and freedom, are the basis not only of the socio-political system and structure but also lie at the root of our education and life. That is, while describing the ideological theories of education, we argue that education should aim at producing a society characterized by equality of opportunities to all without any regard to sex, color, race or religion. It is perhaps for this unbounded faith in equality and freedom that the framers of the Indian Constitution provided in the preamble that all men, irrespective of caste and creed, color, sex or region or religion, would be treated equal in the eyes of law. The fundamental rights provided in the Constitution are rooted in equality of men. In all speculations and writings on education or on democracy, the word equality is juxtaposed with freedom. Rousseau's main thrust in politics, as also in education, was also on equality and liberty. J. Krishnamurti, the philosopher, also shares his views on equality and freedom with Rousseau. We can thus say that all social theories of education accept these concepts as basic to what constitutes the edifice of education as well as our socio-political life. Concept of equality and education. Moore, 1982, seeks to give a positivistic analysis of these two concepts, equality and freedom. Regarding the concepts of equality, he offers a careful and thorough scrutiny of the terms, recognizes the basic meaning of the term as equivalent to equality, fairness or justice, because in no other ways men can be considered equal. Hence, to say that all men are equal means that all need to be equitably or fairly treated. Treating all men as equals is neither desirable nor feasible, because people are in fact different, they have different intelligence, competence, needs, interests and motivations. So treating them equal will do more harm than good. Further, providing equal opportunities to all men is physically not possible, because men cannot have equal access to means. So the only sense in which the egalitarian or the politician argues for equality is the sense of fairness or justice. Now, it is clear that the word equality is not used in its literal sense of sameness. When the egalitarian uses the term equal, he does not mean that all men are the same descriptively or in an empirical sense. We cannot treat all men the same. It will not be appropriate to treat the sick people the same way as we treat the healthy people. We also cannot treat the innocent and the criminals the same manner. In the field of education also, we think that it is proper to treat different children differently with regard to methodology, content, procedures of teaching, techniques of evaluation, and in a variety of other ways. In fact, as indicated above, students have different needs, and it is proper to treat them differently in accordance with their requirements and needs. Treating students according to their needs is not a principle of equality, rather it is tantamount to the principle of social justice. Giving the same education to all children irrespective of their interest, inclination, or intelligence cannot be justified, because it will not contribute to the real growth of the individual. Fair treatment, just treatment, writes Moore, 1982, involves taking into consideration differences in people's circumstances. Equal treatment in any substantial sense is morally and practically acceptable only when it accords with our sense of justice. So what we need as teachers or parents is not equal treatment but fair or just treatment. This will be consistent with making provision of special classes or special schools both for the gifted and the less able. So equality can be considered parallel to justice and appropriateness. Justice in education involves differential treatment for pupils to suit the different requirements. Moore argues that organization and provision of education is to judge not by the extent to which it promotes equality or equal opportunities but by the extent to which it deals with children fairly in what it has to offer them. The concept of equality has been equated with justice and freedom in terms of freedom to and freedom from. Freedom to refers to those freedom which needs to be given to the students in order that they achieve the end of education. Freedom from refers to freedom from factors which inhibit the process of education. Freedom in education. Freedom is a concept which in our political, social, or even personal life is the most sought-after goal of mankind. But the concept is even more complex than the concept of equality. The root idea behind freedom is not to be impeded or constrained by either physical force or by passing laws, which again amounts to indirect use of force. Education is a means of acquiring the abilities without which freedom is not worthy. In fact, education or knowledge does not increase or limit one's freedom, it only increases the ability to use it. Freedom, instead of depending on education, rests on laws, regulations, or social decisions. It is a social or a political good. Actions are liable to be called good or bad only in so far as they are done freely, autonomously, of one's own free will. In the context of education, too much premium has been placed on freedom. Most thinkers on education, viz. Rousseau, Froebel, Herbert Spencer, John Dewey, Rabindranath Tagore, J. Krishnamurthy, and A.S. Neil realized the significance of freedom in the learning of the child. It is this freedom alone which enables the child to develop into an independent and self-regulating person. Most people, including teachers and parents, hold that too much of freedom is not altogether desirable. Freedom may be abused by children and even by adults. Freedom, in fact, is a nebulous concept, which cannot be unequivocally defined. Freedom may be of different kinds, like freedom from restraints that check our personality from growing to its full potential and freedom to do signifying what serves best the individual or social interests. Some freedoms are rated high on a scale of preference, others are devalued and hence discouraged by the society as a whole. Some of the freedoms that are valued and hence preferred are freedom to live where we please, freedom to vote, to choose our friends, to express our ideas, to accept a particular faith or religion, and so on. The list of freedom that most of us would like to discourage is also a long one. For example, we would like discouraging the freedom to steal, to defraud, etc. Education, we understand, presupposed certain freedoms both for the learner as well as for the teachers. The teacher, for example, must be free to carry out her task, to organize her work as she deems fit, to adopt methods of teaching as per the requirement of pupils. Similarly, there are certain freedoms necessary for the pupils to exercise. The pupils must be free to participate in the process of learning and must be free to use the facilities available in the school to the benefit of learning. However, there are certain freedoms which the teacher would like to discourage in children. The freedom to be disorderly, to be inattentive in the class, etc. because, if these freedoms are allowed, the teacher shall not be able to educate them and her effectiveness as teacher would be reduced. At the same time, it will not be in best interest of students also. Then there are certain freedoms, which are sometimes allowed by the teacher and sometimes not. The freedom is to move about, to work with other children, to choose one's own work or own way of working. On the part of teachers, therefore, some freedom are essentially to be allowed, others are essentially to be discouraged, and still others are contingent on the context, and hence their being allowed or disallowed depends on the context. The interesting question, therefore, is how to draw a line of distinction between desirable and undesirable freedoms. As against the traditionalist who takes her stand on the prime importance of knowledge and discipline, children are expected to be quiet, attentive, teacher-directed. The progressivist looks for the personal development of the child. He or she emphasizes the need for spontaneous, self-imposed discipline, individual discovery, and thus is fairly tolerant of freedom within the classroom. The disciplinarian reduces the pupil's freedom to the minimum. The idealistic progressivist or the existentialist regards any imposition by adults on child's spontaneous activity and freedom as tantamount to indoctrination. Both these approaches are the extremes. The truth is that the degree of freedom justified in the classroom will depend on the extent to which such freedoms serve the end of education. Freedom in the context of education, therefore, serves as a means and not as the end. Education in itself is a worthwhile activity or initiation into worthwhileness. Peters, 1966. If granting of freedom results in increased pupils' performance, it is foolish not to grant it. If given freedom leads to noise, disruption, indiscipline, etc., then it is quite reasonable to discourage it. And what is true of pupils' freedom is equally true of that of teachers also. A teacher must have freedom in order to teach, but her freedom in respect of the methods or contents of curriculum is justified to the extent that such freedoms serve the end of education.